The blazing sun beat down mercilessly on Sarah's fragile form as she collapsed onto the scorching sand. Her husband's luxury SUV nothing but a distant dust cloud on the horizon, abandoned in the vast emptiness of the desert with nothing but the clothes on her back and the wedding ring that now felt like a burning brand on her finger. Sarah closed her eyes and prepared for the end, until a massive shadow fell across her face, and the gentle touch of something cool and leathery brushed against her cheek. As consciousness began to slip away, Sarah could barely comprehend the impossibility of what was happening. A massive elephant, somehow thriving in this barren wasteland, had positioned itself between her and the deadly sun, creating a sanctuary of shade while gently nudging her toward a hidden water source with its trunk. What mysterious bond would form between this desperate woman and her unlikely savior? And how would this encounter change both their fates forever? If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe to our channel, and share your own experiences with unexpected kindness in the comments below. 3 hours earlier, Sarah had been sitting in the passenger seat of Raj's climate-controlled Range Rover, staring out at the endless golden expanse of the Thar Desert. What had been pitched as a romantic anniversary getaway was quickly unraveling into yet another battlefield. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone at the charity gala," Raj said, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "The minister was about to sign the development deal when you started talking about endangered species." Sarah turned away from the window. At 32, she still maintained the earnest idealism that had first drawn Raj to her 7 years ago. The development would destroy one of the last elephant corridors in the region. "I'm your wife, not your puppet. My business is what pays for your conservation projects and this lifestyle you enjoy," Raj snapped. "Is that all I am to you? A trophy who should stay silent?" Her voice cracked. "I loved you once. I thought you shared my values." Raj slammed on the brakes, the vehicle skidding on the desert road. "Get out." "What?" "We're in the middle of nowhere. There's a village 10 kilometers ahead. Walk there and think about where your loyalties should lie." He reached across her and pushed open her door. "You can't be serious," Sarah whispered, fear rising in her throat. "Either you support me publicly from now on, or this marriage is over." His eyes, once warm with love, were now cold and distant. Sarah stepped out, expecting him to drive a short distance to make his point. Instead, she watched in disbelief as he accelerated away, dust billowing behind him. "Raj!" she screamed, running after the vehicle until her lungs burned. The car never slowed. The realization crashed over her. He had actually left her here, alone, in the desert. The sun beat down relentlessly as Sarah walked in the direction Raj had indicated, her city boots unsuitable for the terrain. Her phone had no signal, and the water bottle she'd grabbed held less than a cup of liquid. Each step became more difficult as the heat intensified. She'd studied desert ecosystems, but experiencing the harsh reality firsthand was entirely different. The temperature must have been over 40 degrees, and without proper protection, she knew heat stroke was a real danger. An hour passed, then 2. No village appeared on the horizon. Had Raj lied about that too? Sarah's thoughts drifted to when they'd first met at a wildlife conservation fundraiser in Mumbai. Raj had been charming, passionate about combining sustainable development with environmental protection. When had that man disappeared? Perhaps he had never truly existed. The wedding ring on her finger caught the sunlight. Sarah tugged at it, but it remained stubbornly in place, as if mocking her predicament. By the 3rd hour, her water was gone. Her lips cracked, her head pounded, and her vision began to blur. Each breath drew in hot air that seemed to scorch. "Her lungs! Help!" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Anyone?" Only the whisper of wind across sand answered her. Sarah stumbled, fell to her knees, and couldn't find the strength to stand again. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had dedicated her life to protecting animals and their habitats, only to die in one of those very habitats, abandoned by the man who had promised to love her forever. As consciousness began to fade, Sarah's last thoughts were of the elephants she had fought so hard to protect. She had failed them. Raj would push through, his development project now, destroying their ancient migration route. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the empty desert, as the world tilted sideways and darkness began to claim her. The last thing she felt was the scorching sand against her cheek as she collapsed. 3 hours earlier, Sarah had been sitting in the passenger seat of Raj's climate-controlled Range Rover, staring out at the endless golden expanse of the Thar Desert. What had been pitched as a romantic anniversary getaway was quickly unraveling into yet another battlefield. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone at the charity gala," Raj said, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "The minister was about to sign the development deal when you started talking about endangered species." Sarah turned away from the window. At 32, she still maintained the earnest idealism that had first drawn Raj to her 7 years ago. The development would destroy one of the last elephant corridors in the region. "I am your wife, not your puppet. My business is what pays for your conservation projects and this lifestyle you enjoy." Raj snapped. "Is that all I am to you? A trophy who should stay silent?" Her voice cracked. "I loved you once. I thought you shared my values." Raj slammed on the brakes, the vehicle skidding on the desert road. "Get out." "What? We're in the middle of nowhere. There's a village 10 kilometers ahead. Walk there and think about where your loyalties should lie." He reached across her and pushed open her door. "You can't be serious," Sarah whispered, fear rising in her throat. "Either you support me publicly from now on, or this marriage is over." His eyes, once warm with love, were now cold and distant. Sarah stepped out, expecting him to drive a short distance to make his point. Instead, she watched in disbelief as he accelerated away, dust billowing behind him. "Raj!" she screamed, running after the vehicle until her lungs burned. The car never slowed. The realization crashed over her. He had actually left her here, alone, in the desert. The sun beat down relentlessly as Sarah walked in the direction Raj had indicated, her city boots unsuitable for the terrain. Her phone had no signal, and the water bottle she'd grabbed held less than a cup of liquid. Each step became more difficult as the heat intensified. She'd studied desert ecosystems, but experiencing the harsh reality firsthand was entirely different. The temperature must have been over 40 degrees, and without proper protection, she knew heat stroke was a real danger. An hour passed, then 2. No village appeared on the horizon. Had Raj lied about that too? Sarah's thoughts drifted to when they'd first met at a wildlife conservation fundraiser in Mumbai. Raj had been charming, passionate about combining sustainable development with environmental protection. When had that man disappeared? Perhaps he had never truly existed. The wedding ring on her finger caught the sunlight. Sarah tugged at it, but it remained stubbornly in place, as if mocking her predicament. By the 3rd hour, her water was gone. Her lips cracked, her head pounded, and her vision began to blur. Each breath drew in hot air that seemed to scorch her lungs. "Help!" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Anyone!" Only the whisper of wind across sand answered her. Sarah stumbled, fell to her knees, and couldn't find the strength to stand again. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had dedicated her life to protecting animals and their habitats, only to die in one of those very habitats, abandoned by the man who had promised to love her forever. As consciousness began to fade, Sarah's last thoughts were of the elephants she had fought so hard to protect. She had failed them. Raj would push through, his development project now, destroying their ancient migration route. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the empty desert as the world tilted sideways and darkness began to claim her. The last thing she felt was the scorching sand against her cheek as she collapsed. A gentle nudging against her cheek pulled Sarah back to consciousness. Her eyelids felt impossibly heavy as she forced them open, expecting to see a desert nomad, or perhaps a mirage born of her dehydration. Instead, she found herself staring at an enormous gray foot, its wrinkled skin like ancient parchment. Sarah blinked, convinced she was hallucinating. The foot moved slightly, followed by another gentle prod against her shoulder. Sarah mustered her strength to lift her head, and her breath caught in her throat. Standing over her was an adult female elephant, its massive body blocking the cruel sun and casting a life-saving shadow across her prone form. "Impossible," Sarah whispered, her voice a dry rasp. Elephants weren't native to the Thar Desert. They lived in the forests and grasslands of other parts of India. Yet here one stood, defying all logic. The elephant's trunk extended toward her. Again, this time gently touching her arm before pointing in a specific direction. The animal took a few steps away, then turned back, as if waiting. Sarah struggled to her knees. Was this death's final hallucination? It didn't matter. She had nothing to lose by following this apparition. "Okay," she managed to say, forcing herself to stand on trembling legs. "I'll follow you." The elephant rumbled a low sound from deep in its chest and started walking slowly, constantly looking back to ensure Sarah was following. With each step, Sarah felt her resolve strengthen slightly. If she was going to die, at least she wouldn't die alone. They walked for what seemed like an eternity, though it was likely only 20 minutes. The elephant moved with purpose, leading her toward what appeared to be a depression in the landscape. As they approached, Sarah could hardly believe her eyes. A small oasis lay nestled between two sand dunes, a cluster of date palms surrounding, a modest pool of water. Sarah fell to her knees at the water's edge, cupping her hands to drink. The water was warm but clean, and she forced herself to sip slowly despite her body's desperate urge to gulp it down. The elephant waited patiently, dipping her trunk into the water and spraying her sides to cool herself. Only then did Sarah notice something odd about the elephant's gait. She was favoring her left hind leg. "You're injured," Sarah said, her professional instincts kicking in despite her own predicament. The elephant's intelligent eyes seemed to regard her with a knowing look. Sarah had worked with elephants at conservation centers for years, but she'd never felt such an immediate connection as she did with this mysterious desert dweller. As her strength gradually returned, Sarah began to observe her surroundings more carefully. This wasn't just a random waterhole. There were signs that the elephant had been living here: trampled vegetation, dung piles of varying ages, and even what appeared to be a rudimentary shelter formed by palm fronds that had fallen and been arranged against a rock outcropping. "This is your home," Sarah realized aloud. "But how did you end up here?" The elephant extended her trunk again, this time toward Sarah's face in what seemed like a gesture of friendship. Sarah reached out tentatively, placing her hand on the trunk. The elephant's skin was cool and leathery, alive with subtle movements. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "You saved my life." As the sun began to set, painting the desert in hues of orange and purple, Sarah felt an odd sense of calm despite her dire situation. She was still stranded in the desert, abandoned by her husband, with no way to call for help, but she wasn't alone. The elephant settled near the shelter, her massive form providing both protection and companionship in this inhospitable place. Sarah leaned against a palm tree, watching as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "I think I'll call you Lakshmi," she said softly, naming the elephant after the Hindu goddess of prosperity and good fortune. "It seems fitting, since you've brought me the greatest wealth of all right now. Survival." Lakshmi rumbled softly, as if approving the name. As night fell completely, the desert temperature dropped rapidly. Sarah huddled closer to Lakshmi, grateful for the elephant's body heat. In the surreal quiet of the desert night, Sarah found herself wondering what morning would bring. Would Raj return, regretting his actions? Would someone find her? Or was this strange new companionship with Lakshmi the beginning of something she couldn't yet understand? Whatever tomorrow held, Sarah knew one thing with certainty: this elephant had given her a second chance at life, and somehow she would find a way to return the favor. Raj Mehta's Range Rover pulled into the circular driveway of his luxurious Mumbai mansion just as the sun was setting. The property's manicured gardens and imposing facade usually filled him with pride, but tonight he barely noticed them. His hands trembled slightly as he handed the keys to his waiting driver. "Welcome home, sir," said Parvati, the elderly housekeeper who had served the Mehta family for decades. "Where is Madam Sarah? Is she not with you?" Raj avoided her eyes. "She decided to extend her stay with a wildlife group we met in Rajasthan. Conservation work. You know how she is." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue, but he pushed away the discomfort. Sarah had pushed him too far this time, threatening everything he'd built. The desert lesson would teach her where her loyalties should lie. Inside his study, Raj poured himself a double whiskey and drank it in one swallow. His phone had been off since leaving Sarah. Now he turned it on, half expecting a barrage of calls from her. There were none. A flicker of concern crossed his face before he dismissed it. There had been that village nearby. She would have found help there, and was probably just sulking at a hotel, waiting for him to apologize. His phone rang. Vikram, his business partner. The minister signed. "We've got the permits for the Rajasthan development." Vikram's voice was jubilant. "That's excellent news," Raj replied, trying to match his enthusiasm. "Your wife's environmentalist friends are already organizing protests, but it doesn't matter now. We've won." After ending the call, Raj stood at his window overlooking the Mumbai skyline. The development would make him one of the richest men in India. Yet instead of triumph, he felt hollow. The image of Sarah standing in the desert, watching him drive away, flashed in his mind. He pushed it aside and dialed her number, straight to voicemail. "Sarah, it's me. Call me when you get this." He paused. "We need to talk." The next morning, Raj awoke to an unexpected visitor. Inspector Sharma from the Mumbai police. "Mr. Mehta, we've received a concerning report from the Conservation Trust where your wife volunteers. They haven't heard from her, and her colleagues are worried." Raj maintained his composure. "My wife is still in Rajasthan, Inspector. She extended her stay to work with a wildlife group." "I see. And when did you last see her?" "Yesterday afternoon. We had a disagreement about my business. She asked me to leave her with her conservationist colleagues." The inspector's eyes narrowed slightly. "Could you provide contact details for these colleagues?" Raj felt sweat forming on his brow. "I'm afraid I don't have them. Sarah handles all that side of things." After the inspector left, promising to follow up, Raj paced his study anxiously. He tried Sarah's phone again. Still nothing. By evening, his concern had grown into genuine worry. He called hotels in the region near where he'd left her. None had a Sarah Mehta registered. A breaking news alert on his phone made his blood run cold. Controversial Rajasthan development faces. New hurdle as environmental activist and wife of developer goes missing. The story featured a photo of Sarah from the charity gala, smiling alongside him. The same gala where she had publicly challenged the minister about the elephant corridor. Raj's phone began ringing incessantly. Reporters, business associates, Sarah's friends. "Mr. Mehta," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Channel 7 News is at the gate requesting a statement about your wife's disappearance." Panic seized him. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Sarah was meant to learn her lesson, not disappear entirely. In his bathroom, Raj splashed cold water on his face and stared at his reflection. What had he done? The desert was dangerous, scorching. Heat by day, freezing cold by night, with no water for miles. His phone rang again. "Inspector Sharma, Mr. Mehta, we need you to come to the station immediately. There are discrepancies in your statement that require clarification." As he prepared to leave, Raj opened the safe hidden behind a painting in his study. Inside was an emergency passport and a substantial amount of cash, precautions he'd put in place years ago when his business dealings had occasionally skirted legal boundaries. He hesitated, hand hovering over the items. Taking them would look like guilt. Leaving them might mean losing his escape route. The intercom buzzed again. "Sir, the police are at the gate." Raj closed the safe. Decision made. He would face the questions, maintain his story, and hire the best search team money could buy to find Sarah. It wasn't too late to fix this, but as he walked toward the front door, he couldn't shake the image of Sarah's face as he'd driven away, or the crushing realization that in his ambition, he might have destroyed the one person who had truly loved him. Dawn broke over the desert in a spectacular display of pinks and golds that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Sarah awoke curled against Lakshmi's side, the elephant's body having protected her from the night's cold. Her throat was parched, her skin sunburned, but she was alive. Something that seemed miraculous given yesterday's events. Lakshmi was already awake, watching her with those intelligent brown eyes. The elephant rose carefully, again favoring her, left hind leg, and ambled toward the waterhole. Sarah followed, cupping the cool morning water in her hands to drink and splash on her face. "We need to look at that leg of yours," Sarah said, professional instincts taking over despite her own predicament. She approached Lakshmi slowly, speaking in soothing tones as she would with any injured animal. The elephant remained perfectly still as Sarah examined the leg, finding a deep gash on the inner thigh that was showing signs of infection. "Poor girl. How long have you been dealing with this?" Sarah murmured. Looking around, she spotted some plants she recognized. Neem trees grew near the water, their medicinal properties well known throughout India. With careful selection, she gathered leaves and used a smooth stone to grind them into a paste, adding a little water. "This might sting," she warned, approaching Lakshmi with the improvised poultice. To her amazement, the elephant seemed to understand. Lifting her injured leg slightly to provide better access, Sarah applied the paste gently, covering it with large leaves to keep it in place. Lakshmi rumbled appreciatively. "You've been around humans before," Sarah realized aloud. "You're too comfortable with me for a wild elephant." After tending to Lakshmi, Sarah assessed her own situation. She had no phone, no map, and no idea which direction the nearest village might be. The oasis provided water, and there were dates on the palms, but she needed to find help before her body gave out from exposure and inadequate nutrition. "What do you think, Lakshmi?" Should we stay or try to find civilization? As if in answer, Lakshmi moved to the edge of the oasis and began feeding on some desert scrub. She seemed content to stay, and Sarah realized the elephant might be her best chance for survival. The animal clearly knew how to find water and food in this harsh environment. Sarah explored the small oasis more thoroughly, discovering that what she had initially taken for a coincidental arrangement of fallen palm fronds was actually a crude shelter. Someone had been here before. Perhaps nomadic herders. The discovery gave her hope that people occasionally passed through this area. Under the shelter, she found an old metal container that still held a small amount of lamp oil and what might have been cooking implements long ago. The find was like treasure. With these, she might be able to create a signal fire if she heard vehicles. As the day progressed, Sarah developed a routine. She drank regularly, gathered dates from the lower palms, and rested in the shade during the hottest hours. Lakshmi stayed close, occasionally bringing her branches from bushes beyond the oasis perimeter, plants that Sarah might not have recognized as edible. By late afternoon, Sarah had constructed a more substantial shelter using fallen palm fronds and stones. She also created a large SOS in the sand using darker rocks, visible from above should any aircraft pass over. When evening approached, Sarah collected dry brush for a small fire, using the flint-like stones she'd found to create sparks. It took nearly an hour of frustrating attempts, but finally, a tiny flame caught. The warmth was minimal, but the psychological comfort immense. Lakshmi settled nearby, watching the flames with calm interest. In the firelight, Sarah studied the elephant more carefully. There were faint marks on her ears and neck, signs of past captivity. "You escaped from somewhere, didn't you?" Sarah said softly. "Is that how you ended up in this desert?" As darkness fell completely, the stars emerged in breathtaking brilliance. Sarah had never seen them so clearly, away from city lights and pollution. Beside her, Lakshmi's breathing became deep and rhythmic as the elephant dozed. Sarah leaned back against a palm trunk, watching embers float upward to join the stars. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on her. She had dedicated her life to protecting animals, and now an animal was protecting her. "We're quite the pair, aren't we?" she whispered to the sleeping elephant. Both abandoned, both survivors. In that moment, despite the uncertainty of rescue, despite her anger at Raj, despite the danger of her situation, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace. Here, stripped of all pretense and possessions, she had found something genuine, a connection that transcended species, a silent understanding between two beings helping each other survive. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, in this small haven amidst the vast desert, Sarah allowed herself to hope. As Sarah tended the small fire on her third night in the desert, memories washed over her like the gentle waves of a distant shore. She had been just 6 years old when her father, a British diplomat stationed in India, had first taken her to an elephant sanctuary near Bangalore. The moment she'd laid eyes on the gentle giants, something had clicked into place in her young heart. A connection, a calling. "They never forget, Sarah," her father had told her, lifting her onto his shoulders for a better view. And elephants. Memory is a remarkable thing. They remember kindness and cruelty alike, carrying those memories for decades. Throughout her childhood, as they moved between postings in Delhi, London, and back to Mumbai, Sarah's fascination with elephants had only grown. While other girls her age collected dolls, she collected elephant figurines and devoured every book she could find about pachyderm behavior and conservation. By 16, she was volunteering at wildlife sanctuaries during school holidays. By 22, she had earned her veterinary degree with a specialization in wildlife medicine. And by 25, she had established herself as one of the most promising young conservationists in India, focusing on elephant protection and rehabilitation. "I always knew you'd find your path," her mother had said during one of their weekly video calls, her voice tinged with pride despite her initial disappointment that Sarah hadn't followed her into diplomatic service. The fire crackled, bringing Sarah back to the present. Across from her, Lakshmi's massive form was silhouetted against the star-filled sky, her breathing deep and rhythmic. Sarah's thoughts drifted to how she had met Raj. It had been at a charity gala for wildlife conservation in Mumbai 7 years ago. She had been giving an impassioned speech about the need to protect elephant corridors, the ancient migratory routes that development was increasingly blocking. Raj had approached her afterward, charming and seemingly genuine in his interest. "Your speech moved me," he'd said, his dark eyes holding hers. "I believe business and conservation can work together. My newest development plans include wildlife corridors." Sarah had been skeptical, but intrigued. Here was a developer who seemed to understand the importance of conservation, who spoke her language and shared her concerns. Their courtship had been a whirlwind. Dinners at elegant restaurants, weekends at his beach house in Goa, passionate discussions about how to balance progress with protection. "We can change the system from within," he'd promised, as they watched the sunset from his penthouse balcony. "Your knowledge and my influence. We could make real change together." When he proposed 6 months later, Sarah had believed she was not just gaining a husband, but a powerful ally for her cause. The early years had seemed to confirm this. Raj had donated generously to conservation efforts and had even adjusted several of his development plans to accommodate wildlife needs. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, things had changed. The economic downturn had put pressure on Raj's business. Environmental concessions became temporary compromises. Donations to conservation causes dwindled, and Sarah's input on his projects went from being valued to tolerated to, finally, resented. "You're being naive," he'd told her during their last major argument before the fateful desert trip. "These are business decisions, not emotional ones. The elephant corridor costs too much to maintain. The land is too valuable." Sarah had responded with cold fury. "Those corridors have existed for thousands of years. Your development will exist. For what? 50? 100 at most? What gives you the right?" Now, staring into the flames, Sarah wondered when exactly the man she'd fallen in love with had disappeared, or if he had ever truly existed at all. Lakshmi shifted in her sleep, trunk curling protectively around her injured leg. The neem poultice seemed to be helping. The swelling had decreased notably since Sarah had started treating it. Sarah's gaze drifted to her wedding ring, still stubbornly in place, despite her attempts to remove it. The diamond caught the firelight, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the sand. Once it had represented promise and partnership. Now it felt like a shackle to a life built on illusions. With sudden resolve, Sarah worked the ring off her finger. It was difficult. Her fingers were swollen from sunburn and dehydration, but finally, it came free. She held it in her palm. This small circle of precious metal and stone that had cost more than what most Indians earned in years. For a moment, she considered flinging it into the darkness, a symbolic rejection of everything Raj represented. Instead, she carefully placed it in the pocket of her khaki shorts. Whatever its emotional significance, the ring represented material resources that might prove useful for survival. Lakshmi's eyes opened, regarding Sarah across the fire with what seemed like understanding. The elephant extended her trunk slightly, as if reaching out in comfort. "I think we both know something about misplaced trust, don't we?" Sarah said softly. In that moment, with the vast desert surrounding them and the infinite sky above, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. If she survived this, when she survived this, she would reclaim her purpose, free from compromise and false promises, and somehow, she would find a way to help Lakshmi too. As the fire burned down to embers, Sarah curled up on her bed of palm fronds, the cool desert night wrapping around her like a blanket. For the first time since Raj had abandoned her, she fell asleep not with fear, but with a sense of clarity and strange peace. The desert morning arrived with a whisper of wind across sand. Sarah awoke to find Lakshmi already alert, trunk gently swaying as she watched the sunrise paint the landscape in gold. 5 days had passed since the elephant had saved her life, and each day had strengthened their unlikely bond. Sarah approached Lakshmi with the fresh neem paste she'd prepared. "Time to check that leg, my friend." The infection in Lakshmi's wound was clearly receding, the angry red edges now fading to pink. The elephant stood perfectly still during the treatment, occasionally rumbling what Sarah had come to recognize as appreciation. "You're a remarkable patient," Sarah said, smoothing the last of the paste onto the injury. "Much better than some humans I've known." As she worked, Sarah noticed something she hadn't seen before, a small symbol tattooed behind Lakshmi's ear, partially obscured by wrinkles. It appeared to be a stylized lotus flower, the kind used to mark temple elephants. "So, you were a temple elephant," Sarah murmured, tracing the faded design with her fingertip. "How did you end up here, so far from any temple?" Lakshmi gently pressed her trunk against Sarah's shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar over the past days. Comfort, acknowledgement, connection. Sarah's own condition had stabilized, Her sunburn had faded to a tan, and she'd developed a system for rationing the dates and other edible plants Lakshmi showed her. She'd created a makeshift calendar in the sand, marking each passing day with a stone. "No rescue yet," she told Lakshmi, adding another stone to the row. "But we're managing pretty well, aren't we?" The truth was, part of Sarah didn't want to be rescued, at least not immediately. Here, in this harsh but honest environment, she had found a clarity that had eluded her in Mumbai. Here, there were no social obligations, no compromises, no pretending that her marriage was something it wasn't, and there was Lakshmi, this extraordinary creature who had somehow found her way to Sarah when she needed her most. In the hot midday, hours, they rested together in the shade. Sarah had expanded her shelter using more palm fronds, creating enough space for herself and for Lakshmi to shield her head during the most brutal heat. "I should be focusing on getting home," Sarah said, aloud, more to herself than to the elephant. "But I'm not sure where home is anymore." Lakshmi reached out with her trunk, delicately touching Sarah's hair. The gesture was so gentle, so deliberate, that Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. "You understand, don't you? Somehow you understand." As evening approached, Sarah collected firewood for their nightly ritual. The small fire provided both warmth against the desert night and a sense of security. It also served as a potential signal, though no travelers had passed near the oasis since Sarah's arrival. While gathering kindling at the oasis edge, Sarah discovered a worn leather pouch half buried in the sand. Inside was a battered tin box, containing matches, a small knife with a wooden handle, and a tarnished silver amulet of Ganesha, the elephant-headed deity. "Look what I found," she told Lakshmi, holding up the matches triumphantly. "This will make fire starting much easier." The knife proved useful too. Sarah used it to cut more efficiently, improving their shelter and creating a small rack for drying plants she could eat. The Ganesha amulet she hung from a string inside the shelter, a fitting talisman for her and her elephant companion. That night, as they watched the stars emerge, Sarah spoke to Lakshmi about her childhood, her conservation work, the gradual dissolution of her marriage. The elephant listened, eyes reflecting the firelight, occasionally making soft rumbling sounds that encouraged Sarah to continue. "I feel more myself with you than I have with anyone in years," Sarah confessed. "Is that strange, to feel understood by an elephant?" Lakshmi's trunk reached out, gently taking Sarah's hand. The gesture was so human, so deliberate, that Sarah gasped softly. "You've been through something too, haven't you?" she whispered. "Something that brought you to this place, alone." In the days that followed, their routine deepened. Each morning, Sarah checked and treated Lakshmi's wound, which was healing remarkably well. They would then walk the perimeter of the oasis, Sarah collecting edible plants while Lakshmi foraged for her own food. During the hottest hours, they rested in the shade. Sarah used this time to improve their shelter and to create a series of large SOS signs in the surrounding sand, using dark stones that would be visible from above. Evenings were spent by the fire, with Sarah talking and Lakshmi listening. Sometimes, Sarah sang songs from her childhood, her voice carrying across the silent desert. Other times, they simply sat in companionable silence, watching the moon rise over the dunes. On the 7th night, as Sarah tended the fire, Lakshmi suddenly raised her head, ears flaring. She made a low warning sound deep in her throat. "What is it?" Sarah whispered, instantly alert. In the distance, barely visible in the moonlight, shapes moved across the sand. A small group of figures approaching the oasis. Sarah's heart raced. Rescue or danger? Lakshmi moved protectively closer to Sarah, her massive body a shield between the approaching strangers and her human companion. After days of isolation, the prospect of human contact was both thrilling and terrifying. Sarah stood, one hand resting on Lakshmi's trunk for courage, and waited to see what fate had brought them. Arjun Kapoor's office at the Delhi Wildlife Conservation Trust was cluttered with research papers, wildlife photographs, and half-empty coffee cups. At 35, he had already established himself as one of India's leading elephant conservationists, his work focusing on the preservation of migration corridors across the subcontinent. The television in the corner was tuned to a news channel, volume low. Arjun barely registered the background noise until a familiar name caught his attention. Sarah Mehta, wife of prominent developer Raj Mehta, has been reported missing in Rajasthan. Mrs. Mehta, a respected wildlife veterinarian and conservationist, was last seen 3 days ago during a trip to the Thar Desert region with her husband, Arjun. Dropped the report he was reading, turning up the volume. The news anchor continued. Mr. Mehta claims his wife chose to stay behind with a conservation group they encountered, but authorities have been unable to verify this statement. Police are treating her disappearance as suspicious. A photo of Sarah filled the screen. Her bright smile, her determined eyes. Arjun's stomach clenched. They had worked together for years before her marriage, conducting research on elephant behavior and spearheading conservation efforts across India. Their professional relationship had blossomed into something more personal, until Sarah had met Raj Mehta at that fateful fundraiser. Arjun grabbed his phone, dialing the number of Sarah's assistant at the Mumbai Conservation Center. Priya, it's Arjun. I just saw the news about Sarah. What's happening? Priya's voice was tight with worry. No one's heard from her in 3 days, Arjun. Raj claims she's with conservationists in Rajasthan, but we've contacted every group working in that region. No one has seen her. And the police? They're questioning Raj, but he's powerful. They're proceeding carefully. Arjun paced his office, mind racing. What was she doing in the Thar Desert? There's no elephant habitat there. It was supposed to be an anniversary trip. Priya hesitated, but things haven't been good between them. Sarah confided in me last month that she was considering leaving him. His new development project would destroy the Kaduli elephant corridor, the one you two mapped together years ago. The pieces clicked into place in Arjun's mind. Sarah would never have abandoned her principles, even for her husband, if she had challenged Raj about the development. I'm coming to Mumbai, he decided. Today, I'll help with the search. After booking the next flight, Arjun pulled up maps of the Thar Desert region on his computer. It was vast, inhospitable terrain. If Sarah was lost there, every hour counted. He downloaded the data to his tablet and began packing essential survival gear. His colleague Maya appeared in the doorway. I heard about Sarah. Go find her, Arjun. The team will cover your projects here. 3 hours later, Arjun was in Mumbai, meeting with Inspector Sharma at the police headquarters. The inspector was a serious man with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Mr. Kapoor, I understand you and Mrs. Mehta worked together. For 7 years, Arjun confirmed. She's one of the most dedicated conservationists I know. The story her husband is telling, it doesn't add up. Inspector Sharma nodded slightly. We're inclined to agree. Mr. Mehta's statement contains several inconsistencies. He claims he left her with conservationists but can't name the group. His cell phone records show he was in the desert region for less than 24 hours. A very short anniversary trip. Have you tracked his exact route? His vehicle has GPS, but Mr. Mehta claims it malfunctioned during the trip. The inspector's tone suggested what he thought of this convenient failure. However, we do have his credit card statements. He refueled at a station near Jaisalmer. Arjun leaned forward. That's something. I know the desert region well from conservation work. If you give me the locations you've confirmed, I can organize a targeted search. Officially, I cannot authorize civilian involvement in a police investigation, Inspector Sharma said carefully. Then he slid a folder across the desk. However, I cannot prevent you from traveling to Rajasthan as a concerned friend. Inside, the folder were copies of Raj's credit card statements, cell phone tower pings, and the initial police report. Arjun studied them intently. There's one more thing you should know, the inspector added. We've obtained security footage from the Jaisalmer fuel station. Mr. Mehta was alone when he refueled, both arriving and departing. Mrs. Mehta was not in the vehicle. A cold feeling settled in Arjun's stomach. He left her somewhere in the desert. That is our current theory. Mr. Mehta is being monitored closely, but without concrete evidence, we cannot detain him. As Arjun left the police station, his phone rang. Priya again. I accessed Sarah's email, she said without preamble. She kept a shared calendar with Raj. Their anniversary trip was supposed to include stops at 3 luxury resorts, but the last 2 reservations were canceled the day before they left. By whom? Raj. And Arjun? He's just announced that the Kaduli development project is moving forward immediately. The timing is suspicious as hell. Arjun finished. I'm heading to Rajasthan tonight. Keep digging, and update me with anything you find. That evening, Arjun visited Sarah's office at the Mumbai Conservation Center. Nothing seemed out of place. Her desk was organized. Photos of elephants lined the walls, and her well-worn field jacket hung on the back of her chair, as if she might return any moment. A framed photograph caught his eye. Sarah and himself, standing beside an elderly elephant they had helped rescue from an illegal logging operation years ago. Her smile in that moment had been radiant, full of purpose and joy. "I'll find you," he promised the smiling image. "Hold on, Sarah. Just hold on." As night fell, Arjun boarded a flight to Jaisalmer, the folder of evidence secure in his bag and a determination burning in his heart. He didn't know what he would find in the desert, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not return without answers. The approaching figures materialized from the moonlit desert. 5 men dressed in traditional Rajasthani clothing, leading 3 camels laden with supplies. They stopped a respectful distance from the oasis when they spotted Lakshmi standing, protectively near Sarah. "Namaste," called the eldest, a man with a weathered face and a white mustache. "We mean no harm." Sarah stepped forward, keeping one hand on Lakshmi for reassurance. "Namaste. I'm Sarah Mehta." The men exchanged surprised glances. "We have heard of a missing woman on the radio," said the elder. "Is this you?" Sarah's heart leaped. "Yes. I was abandoned here several days ago. Are you from a nearby village?" The man nodded. "I am Deepak. We are from Kuri village, 20 kilometers east. We follow the old trade routes through the desert." His eyes moved to Lakshmi with undisguised wonder. "But never have we seen an elephant here. This is most unusual. She saved my life," Sarah explained. "She's injured and needs proper veterinary care." Deepak approached slowly, hands raised to show Lakshmi he meant no threat. The elephant watched him warily, but didn't move away from Sarah. "She bears the mark of a temple elephant," Deepak observed, noting the faded lotus symbol. "There are stories of an elephant that escaped from a traveling circus years ago. Some believed she died in the desert. Others said she became a desert spirit, protecting lost travelers." The men made camp near Sarah's shelter, sharing their supplies generously. They provided her with fresh water, flatbread, and lentil curry. That tasted like heaven after days of dates and desert plants. As they sat around the enlarged fire, Deepak explained that his group traveled between remote villages, trading goods and carrying news. "We would have passed by this oasis tomorrow as part of our route. It was Lakshmi's fire that drew us here tonight. A fortunate accident, or perhaps not accident," said one of the younger men. "My grandmother would say the desert goddess guided us." Sarah learned that Kuri village had a working radio and occasional mobile phone reception when weather conditions were favorable. "We can help you contact authorities tomorrow," Deepak assured her. "And Lakshmi?" Sarah asked, watching the elephant drink from the oasis pool in the firelight. "That is more difficult," Deepak admitted. "The nearest wildlife sanctuary is hundreds of kilometers away, and she seems," he searched for the words, "attached to you." "As I am to her," Sarah said softly. That night, with the traders camped nearby, Sarah slept more soundly than she had since her abandonment. The knowledge that help had arrived brought both relief and an unexpected sadness. Her time alone with Lakshmi in this desert sanctuary was coming to an end. Morning brought new perspectives. As Sarah shared breakfast with the traders, Deepak revealed more about the desert ecosystem. "The Thar seems harsh, but it is full of life for those who know how to see it," he explained, pointing out tiny plants that stored water in their roots and insects that appeared only at dawn to collect. My people have lived here for countless generations. We understand the desert's secrets, where water hides beneath the sand, which plants heal, which harm." Sarah listened, fascinated. Her conservation work had focused on forest elephants. The desert ecosystem was new territory, yet she recognized the same delicate balance she had studied elsewhere. Each species adapted perfectly to its niche, each relationship between plant and animal, fine-tuned by millennia of evolution. "Your elephant has learned these secrets too," Deepak observed, watching Lakshmi skillfully unearth a specific root with her trunk. "See how she chooses only certain plants? She has become a creature of the desert." Later, as they prepared to journey to Kuri village, Sarah voiced her concern about Lakshmi. "She can't travel quickly with her injured leg, and I won't leave her behind." Deepak nodded thoughtfully. "The elephant chose to save you. There is meaning in this. Our village elders will want to hear your story." The journey to Kuri was slow, the traders adjusting their pace to accommodate Lakshmi's injured leg. Sarah walked beside the elephant, occasionally resting a hand on her side for both support and reassurance. As they traveled, Deepak shared desert wisdom passed down through generations. He showed Sarah how to find water by watching the behavior of certain insects, how to predict sandstorms by the color of the sunset, and which plants could be used for medicine. Your knowledge of elephants and my knowledge of the desert. Together we ensure Lakshmi's well-being, he said with a smile. By late afternoon, the mud brick houses of Kori village appeared on the horizon, nestled against a large dune. Children spotted their approach first, running out to meet them. They stopped in amazement at the sight of Lakshmi, then raced back to the village, shouting the news. By the time Sarah's group reached the village, it seemed the entire population had come out to witness the extraordinary sight of an elephant in the desert. An elderly woman stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. The elephant guardian, she whispered, bowing slightly to Lakshmi. The stories were true. The village headman welcomed Sarah formally, offering the hospitality of his home. Tonight you will rest, he said. Tomorrow we will help you contact your people. As the villagers prepared a space for Lakshmi near the community well, providing fresh fodder and water, Sarah found herself surrounded by curious children. They asked endless questions about the elephant, and Sarah answered as best she could, realizing how much joy it gave her to share her knowledge. That evening, seated beside Lakshmi under a canopy of stars, Sarah reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. What had begun as a betrayal, Raj abandoning her to die, had led to this unexpected connection, not just with Lakshmi, but with the desert itself and the people who called it home. Perhaps there are no accidents, she whispered to Lakshmi, echoing the trader's words from the night before. The elephant's trunk gently curved around her shoulders in what felt remarkably like an embrace. Raj paced the polished marble floor of his Mumbai office, phone pressed to his ear. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, rain lashed against the glass, mirroring the storm of anxiety within him. Vikram, I need you to come to the office immediately. It's urgent. Without waiting for his business partner's response, Raj ended the call. 5 days had passed since he'd abandoned Sarah in the desert. 5 days of police questioning, media speculation, and mounting pressure. The search teams he'd privately funded had found no trace of her. Each passing hour diminished the likelihood of her survival in the harsh desert environment. The door opened, and Vikram entered, shaking rainwater from his umbrella. At 45, he was a decade older than Raj, with shrewd eyes and the calculated calm of someone accustomed to crisis management. The minister called, Vikram said, without preamble. He's concerned about the publicity. The environmental protesters are using Sarah's disappearance to target our development project. Raj collapsed into his leather chair. The development is the least of my concerns right now. Vikram's eyebrows rose. Is it? The Kaduli project represents nearly 60% of our company's projected revenue for the next 5 years. Without it, we're finished. My wife is missing. Raj slammed his fist on the desk. Missing because... Vikram let the question hang in the air. The silence between them stretched taut as a wire. Finally, Raj covered his face with his hands. I did something terrible, Vikram. He recounted the argument, the moment of rage when he'd ordered Sarah out of the car, his decision to drive away. I meant to teach her a lesson, to drive a short distance and come back. But then your pride took over. Vikram finished, his voice unnervingly calm. And now the police are treating you as a suspect in your wife's disappearance. I've told them she chose to stay with conservationists, a lie they're clearly not believing. Vikram moved to the window, watching the rain. The GPS data from... Your car will eventually be recovered, regardless of what you told the police about it malfunctioning. The fuel station footage shows you alone. There will be additional cameras along your route. It's only a matter of time. Raj felt the walls closing in. What do I do? Vikram turned, his expression unreadable. You have 2 options. Confess everything, and face the consequences, which will likely include prison time for criminal negligence at minimum, possibly manslaughter if they don't find her alive. Or leave the country tonight. I can have the corporate jet ready in 3 hours. Switzerland, then perhaps Dubai. We have contacts who can help establish a new identity. The option hung between them, tempting in its simplicity. Escape. A new beginning. No consequences. Raj stood and walked to the small bar in the corner of his office, pouring himself a generous measure of whiskey. The amber liquid burned his throat, but did nothing to quiet the voice in his head. Sarah's voice, asking how he could live with himself if he ran. I need to fix this, Vikram. I need to find her. His partner sighed. The time for fixing this was 5 days ago, when you should have turned around and gone back for her. Now, we need to mitigate the damage. To you and to the company. The intercom buzzed. Raj's assistant's voice was tense. Sir, Inspector Sharma is here with a warrant. He's insisting on seeing you immediately. Vikram moved swiftly to Raj's side. Say nothing without your lawyer present. Nothing. I'll contact Gupta right away. The office door opened to reveal Inspector Sharma, flanked by 2 officers. His expression was grim, but not without compassion. Raj Mehta, I am placing you under arrest for the attempted murder of Sarah Mehta. You have the right to remain silent. As the officer continued reciting his rights, Raj felt a strange sense of relief washing over him. The lies, the evasions, the crushing guilt, all giving way to the simple, terrible truth. We've recovered the dashboard camera footage from your vehicle, Mr. Mehta, Inspector Sharma explained as an officer applied handcuffs. It seems the malfunction you reported was limited to the GPS system only. Raj closed his eyes, remembering the camera he'd had installed after a minor accident last year. He'd forgotten it was there, recording everything. The argument, Sarah stepping out of the car, his decision to drive away. Is there any news of my wife? He asked quietly. A search. Team is exploring the area where you left her. That's all I can tell you at this time. As they led him through the office, past shocked employees and toward the waiting police car, Raj caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass doors. A broken man, bearing little resemblance to the confident, ambitious developer who had once believed success justified any action. Outside, reporters had already gathered, cameras flashing in the rain. Questions were shouted, microphones thrust forward. Raj kept his head down, shame finally overwhelming his pride. In the police car, water, streaming down the windows obscuring the world outside. Inspector Sharma studied him with careful eyes. For what it's worth, Mr. Mehta, your cooperation now may help us find your wife. If she's still alive out there, every detail you can provide could make the difference. Raj nodded, the weight of his actions pressing down on him like a physical force. I'll tell you everything, every detail, just find her, please. As the car pulled away from the curb, Raj watched his empire recede in the rain-blurred window. The buildings, the wealth, the power, all meaningless now against the simple, devastating fact that in a moment of anger, he had abandoned the woman he had once promised to cherish and protect, and in that moment of clarity, facing the consequences of his actions, Raj Mehta finally understood what Sarah had been trying to tell him all along, that some things, once destroyed, can never be rebuilt. Sarah woke to the sound of urgent voices. She had spent 2 days in Kuri village, where the elders had treated her with tremendous respect, partly for her survival story, and partly for her connection with Lakshmi, whom they regarded with near-reverent awe. The village's ancient radio had crackled to life the previous evening, bringing news that search parties were scouring the desert for her. Sarah had sent a message confirming she was alive and safe in Kuri, though the transmission had cut off before she could provide details. Now, stepping outside the small guest hut, she found the villagers gathered in the central square, faces tense as they looked toward the eastern horizon. There, a massive wall of dark clouds was building, staining the morning sky an ominous purple-gray. Deepak approached, his usually calm demeanor replaced by evident concern. Early monsoon, he explained. Very unusual for this region, and dangerous. The dry riverbeds will flood quickly. Sarah looked around for Lakshmi, spotting the elephant near the village well. Even from a distance, she could see the animal's unease, ears flapping nervously, trunk testing the changing air. Will the village be safe? Sarah asked. Deepak nodded. Kuri sits on high ground. Our ancestors chose wisely, but there are families in the lower settlements who may be at risk. We're organizing evacuation teams now. The headman approached, his weathered face grave. The radio says the storm has already brought flash floods near Jaisalmer. All roads may soon be impassable. Sarah's heart sank. The rescue team would be forced to delay, possibly for days. I want to help, she told the headman. I have experience with emergency situations from my conservation work. He studied her face, then nodded. Your help is welcome. The families in the valley have children and elderly. They will need assistance reaching higher ground. Within the hour, Sarah found herself part of a small convoy heading toward a cluster of homes nestled in a shallow valley 5 kilometers from Kuri. To her surprise, Lakshmi had insisted on following, refusing to stay behind despite her injured leg. She senses purpose, Deepak said, walking beside Sarah. Elephants are wise creatures. Perhaps she knows she is needed. The air grew heavy as they traveled, the wind strengthening and carrying the distant scent of rain. The dark clouds spread across the sky like spilled ink, and Sarah felt the first few droplets, large and warm, splatter against her skin. They reached the small settlement, just as the storm unleashed its fury. Rain pounded the earth, instantly transforming the dusty ground into slick mud. The families had already begun gathering their essentials, loading them onto carts hitched to nervous camels. Sarah helped an elderly woman secure her belongings while Deepak translated instructions. Children watched Lakshmi with wide eyes, momentarily distracted from the danger by the marvel of an elephant in their midst. "The wadi will flood soon," shouted one of the men, pointing to a dry streambed that curved around the settlement. "We must move quickly." The evacuation proceeded with practiced efficiency, the desert dwellers well versed in nature's sudden threats. Within 20 minutes, the small community was moving toward higher ground, adults carrying the youngest children, camels laden with essential possessions. Sarah helped where she could, supporting an elderly man who struggled to walk through the increasingly muddy terrain. The rain fell in sheets now, reducing visibility to mere meters, and drowning out all sounds except its own relentless drumming. They had covered perhaps half the distance to safety when a terrified shout cut through the downpour. "Rashid is missing! My son is missing!" A woman stood frozen in panic, scanning the huddled group. Her son, a boy of perhaps 5 or 6, was nowhere to be seen. "When did you last see him?" Sarah asked, Deepak translating her question. "He was helping with the goats," the mother sobbed. "He must have gone back." Deepak and 2 other men immediately volunteered to return to the settlement. Sarah joined them without hesitation. "The wadi will flood any minute," one of the villagers warned. "If you go back, you may not return in time." "We must try," Deepak insisted. As they turned to retrace their steps, a deafening roar filled the air. Looking toward the sound, Sarah saw a wall of water surging through the previously dry streambed, carrying branches, debris, and churning mud. "The flood is here," someone shouted. "Too late!" In that moment of collective despair, Lakshmi trumpeted loudly and moved forward, her massive form cutting through the rain. Before anyone could react, she had picked up Sarah with her trunk, depositing her on her back. "Lakshmi, what?" The elephant didn't wait for Sarah to finish. With surprising speed, despite her injured leg, she waded into the rising water, following the path back to the settlement. "She's going for the boy!" Deepak shouted after them. "The elephant is going for the boy!" Clinging to Lakshmi's back, Sarah was both terrified and awestruck by the elephant's determination. The water level rose rapidly, already reaching Lakshmi's knees, but the elephant pushed forward with unwavering purpose. They reached the abandoned settlement to find most structures already partially submerged. Lakshmi paused, trunk raised high, testing the air. Then, with sudden decision, she moved toward what had been a small animal pen. There, huddled atop a wooden feeding trough that barely kept him above the rising water, was the missing boy. His eyes widened in disbelief at the sight of the elephant approaching. "Rashid!" Sarah called, extending her hand. "Come quickly." The boy hesitated only briefly before jumping from his precarious perch onto Lakshmi's offered trunk. The elephant carefully lifted him, passing him up to Sarah. "Hold on tight," she instructed, securing the child in front of her. The return journey was even more perilous. The water had risen significantly, now reaching Lakshmi's flanks. The current pushed against them, threatening to sweep them away with each step. Yet Lakshmi moved with remarkable confidence, choosing her path carefully, using her weight and strength to maintain stability against the flood's pull. Several times, Sarah felt them falter, but each time, Lakshmi regained her footing. When they finally emerged from the water and rejoined the evacuees, a cheer rose above the storm's fury. Rashid was immediately enveloped in his mother's desperate embrace, while the villagers surrounded Lakshmi with expressions of awe and gratitude. "The elephant guardian," the headman said, touching his forehead in respect. The old stories spoke true. As they continued their journey to higher ground, the rain still pouring relentlessly around them, Sarah pressed her cheek against Lakshmi's wet skin, overwhelmed by the bond they shared, and the extraordinary courage she had just witnessed. "Thank you," she whispered, knowing words were inadequate for what had just transpired between them. A mutual trust and purpose that transcended species, forged in the harsh crucible of survival. By nightfall, the entire group had reached the safety of a plateau where emergency shelters awaited. And as Sarah helped distribute food and blankets, she noticed that every person, young and old, approached Lakshmi with offerings of gratitude, the choicest fodder, gentle touches, and whispered thanks. The elephant who had once been abandoned to the desert had become, in the space of a single act of courage, a revered savior. The morning after the flood brought clear skies and the sweet, earthy scent of rain-soaked desert. Sarah stood at the edge of the plateau, surveying the transformed landscape below, where there had been only sand and sparse vegetation. Temporary, lakes now glistened in the sunlight, their surfaces reflecting the intense blue of the sky. "Water brings brief life to the desert," said a voice behind her. It was Noor, the village's elderly healer, her face a map of fine lines that deepened when she smiled. "By next week, flowers will bloom where you see only water now." The evacuation camp had become a small temporary village, with families from Kori and the valley settlements working together to create order from chaos. Children ran between makeshift tents, their laughter a counterpoint to the previous day's terror. Lakshmi had become the center of attention, particularly among the children. Despite her still healing leg, she patiently allowed them to stroke her trunk and sides, occasionally spraying the more adventurous ones with gentle showers of water that elicited shrieks of delight. "She has the soul of a mother," Noor observed, watching the elephant's interactions with the children. "It is why she saved the boy." Sarah nodded, having witnessed firsthand Lakshmi's protective instincts. "She saved me too, when no one else could." The village headman approached, accompanied by Deepak. "There is news," he announced. "The radio is working again. The authorities know you are safe, but the roads remain impassable. It may be several days before anyone can reach us." "Several days is not so bad," Sarah replied, surprised to find she meant it. The initial urgency of contacting the outside world had faded, replaced by a growing appreciation for the unexpected sanctuary she had found among these people. "You will stay with us in Kori when we return," the headman said. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, offered with the simple hospitality that characterized the desert community. "Both you and Lakshmi," that afternoon, as the waters began to recede from the higher parts of the valley, Noor invited Sarah to assist her in treating those with minor injuries from the evacuation. Sarah's medical training as a veterinarian proved surprisingly adaptable to human patients, particularly when combined with Noor's extensive knowledge of traditional remedies. "This paste from the neem tree," Sarah explained to a young mother, as she applied it to her child's scraped knee, "has natural antibacterial properties. I've been using it on Lakshmi's leg with good results." "The elephant medicines work for human children too?" the woman asked, surprised. Sarah smiled. "We're not so different, really. All living things need care, respect, and healing." As they worked, Noor shared her knowledge of desert plants and their medicinal properties, while Sarah explained modern veterinary techniques. The exchange bridged their different worlds, creating a fusion of wisdom that benefited everyone they treated. By evening, when the community gathered for a shared meal, Sarah found herself seated in a place of honor beside the headman and elders. Lakshmi remained nearby, accepting offerings of the finest fodder from grateful villagers. "Tell us," asked an elder after the meal, "how did you come to be abandoned in the desert?" Sarah hesitated, the pain of Raj's betrayal still raw. But these people had taken her in, had treated her with kindness and respect. They deserved honesty. She told them everything: her work as a conservationist, her marriage to Raj, the gradual erosion of their relationship as his business ambitions clashed with her environmental principles, and finally, the devastating moment when he had driven away, leaving her to die. "He wished to silence your voice," Noor said when Sarah finished, her tone matter-of-fact rather than judgmental. "Men have tried to silence women's wisdom since time began, yet here you are speaking." "Still." "And your husband?" asked the headman. "What happens to him now?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "When they find me alive, he'll face consequences for what he did. But truthfully, I haven't decided what I want those consequences to be." The conversation shifted to Lakshmi, with Deepak, sharing what they had pieced together of the elephant's history. According to local legend, a temple elephant had escaped from a traveling circus nearly a decade ago. Rather than dying in the harsh desert as most had assumed, she had apparently adapted, learning to survive in one of the world's most challenging environments. "The lotus mark behind her ear," confirmed one of the older men. is the symbol of the Ganesh temple in Jaipur. I recognized it when I first saw her. She was not treated well in captivity," added another villager who had once worked with circus animals. "See the old scars on her flanks? Those came from hooks used to control her through pain." Sarah felt a surge of protective anger. No wonder she chose freedom, even if it meant the desert. After the meal, as stars appeared in the vast desert sky, the community's mood turned celebratory. Someone produced a harmonium, another a tabla drum, and soon music filled the night air. Children danced while elders sang traditional songs that spoke of desert hardships and joys. To Sarah's amazement, Lakshmi seemed to enjoy the music, swaying slightly to the rhythms and occasionally rumbling her approval at particularly energetic passages. "Elephants love music," Sarah explained to the curious onlookers. "In the wild, they communicate through rumbles and calls that are like songs. Some of the frequencies are so low, humans can't even hear them." A young girl approached shyly, offering a small wooden flute. "Will Lakshmi like this music?" Sarah nodded encouragingly. "I think she would." The girl began to play a simple, haunting melody. Lakshmi's ears flared forward, her attention completely captured. When the song ended, she extended her trunk toward the girl in what seemed like a request for more. As the celebration continued into the night, Sarah found herself experiencing a sense of belonging she had almost forgotten. Here, among people who lived in harmony with the harsh desert, her knowledge and passion for wildlife were not just tolerated, but valued. Here, Lakshmi wasn't viewed as a commodity or attraction, but as a sentient being worthy of respect. "You seem at peace," Noor observed, settling beside Sarah on a woven mat. "I am," Sarah realized, surprised by the truth of it. "More than I've been in years." "The desert strips away pretense," the old woman said, gesturing to the stark landscape around them. "It shows us what truly matters. Water, shelter, kindness, community. Perhaps this is the gift your husband unknowingly gave you when he left. You hear?" Sarah considered this, watching Lakshmi interact gently with the village children. "I think you're right, though the greater gift was finding Lakshmi." Noor smiled, the firelight casting deep shadows across her weathered face. "Or perhaps it was Lakshmi who found you. Some connections are written in the stars long before we recognize them." Later that night, as the celebration wound down and families retreated to their tents, Sarah sat alone with Lakshmi under the canopy of stars. The elephant's presence beside her felt like the most natural thing in the world, a friendship that transcended species, forged through mutual survival and trust. "Whatever happens next," she whispered, stroking Lakshmi's trunk, "we face it together." The elephant rumbled softly in response, a sound that Sarah had come to recognize as agreement. 3 days after the flood, the roads to Kuri village were finally passable again. Sarah was helping repair a damaged water pump when shouts drew her attention to the village entrance. A dusty jeep had arrived, followed by 2 official-looking vehicles. Her heart quickened when a familiar figure emerged from the jeep. Tall, with unruly black hair and the practical clothing of someone accustomed to field work rather than offices. "Arjun," she whispered, hardly believing her eyes. He scanned the gathered villagers until his gaze found her. For a moment, he stood frozen, as if seeing a ghost. Then he was moving, covering the distance between them in long strides. "Sarah," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Thank God." They stood facing each other, separated by 3 years of minimal contact and the complicated history between them. Then Arjun stepped forward and embraced her tightly. "I thought we might be too late," he said against her hair. Sarah returned the embrace, surprised by the intensity of her own emotion. "How did you find me?" "I've been working with Inspector Sharma. When your message came through from Kuri, I was already in Jaisalmer organizing search teams." He stepped back, his eyes moving over her face as if reassuring himself she was really there. "Raj has been arrested. He confessed to abandoning you in the desert." The news hit Sarah with less impact than she might have expected. Raj's betrayal felt distant now, as if it had happened to someone else in another lifetime. "There's something you need to see," she said, taking Arjun's hand. "Someone, actually." She led him to the village square where Lakshmi was helping move building materials for the repair efforts, carefully lifting heavy wooden beams with her trunk and placing them where directed by the village craftsman. Arjun stopped abruptly, his professional training giving way to pure astonishment. "Is that an elephant? Here? In the Thar Desert?" "This is Lakshmi," Sarah said, a hint of pride in her voice. "She saved my life." She explained how the elephant had found her near death, led her to water, and protected her until the desert traders discovered them. Arjun listened with growing amazement, his eyes moving between Sarah and Lakshmi, as if struggling to process the extraordinary story. "I've spent my career studying elephant behavior," he said finally, "and I've never heard of anything like this. An elephant, adapting to desert conditions, choosing to save a human. She's special," Sarah said simply. Lakshmi, noticing their attention, set down the beam she was carrying and approached. She regarded Arjun with evident curiosity, her trunk extending to investigate this newcomer. "She has the temple marking," Arjun observed, noticing the faded lotus symbol behind her ear. "And those scars. She's had a difficult past. The villagers believe she escaped from a traveling circus years ago. Instead of dying in the desert as everyone assumed, she adapted." Arjun raised his hand slowly, allowing Lakshmi to become accustomed to his scent. "May I?" At Sarah's nod, he gently touched the elephant's trunk, his expression one of professional assessment mixed with wonder. "Her physical condition is remarkable given the circumstances, though that leg needs proper veterinary attention. I've been treating it with local medicinal plants. The infection is much better, but you're right, she needs professional care." As Arjun examined Lakshmi more thoroughly, government officials approached, introducing themselves as representatives from the Rajasthan Wildlife Department. They had come in response to the reports of an elephant in the desert, a situation unprecedented in their experience. "Mrs. Mehta," said the senior official, "this elephant is a protected species. She must be relocated to an appropriate sanctuary." "I understand," Sarah replied, though the thought of separation from Lakshmi created a physical ache in her chest. "But she's injured and requires careful handling. I'd like to accompany her during transport." "That can be arranged," the official agreed. "There's a sanctuary near Jaipur that specializes in rehabilitating elephants from captivity. Dr. Kapoor is well acquainted with their work, I believe." Arjun nodded. "The Elephant Haven Sanctuary. I've collaborated with them on research projects. They do excellent work." The village headman joined their discussion, expressing the community's attachment to Lakshmi. "She is the elephant guardian of Kuri now," he explained to the officials. "She saved one of our children during the flood. We would be honored if she could remain." The wildlife officer shook his head regretfully. "The desert is no place for an elephant, despite her remarkable adaptation. She needs a proper habitat with adequate food, water, and medical care." That evening, as preparations were made for departure the following morning, Sarah sat with Arjun outside her guest hut, watching the sunset paint the desert gold. "You've changed," he observed quietly. "Being left to die will do that to a person," Sarah replied with a wry smile. "It's more than that." Arjun studied her face in the fading light. "There's a clarity about you now, a certainty I don't remember seeing before." Sarah considered this. "When everything is stripped away, comfort, security, the future you thought you had, what remains is what truly matters. For me, that's my connection to creatures like Lakshmi. My work in conservation, those were always my truths, but I compromised them for Raj's vision of success. And now I know I can't compromise anymore." She looked toward where Lakshmi was accepting farewell offerings from village children. Seeing her adapt and survive against all odds, it reminded me of who I really am. Arjun reached for her hand, his touch gentle. "For what it's worth, I always saw who you really were, even when you couldn't see it yourself." The unspoken history between them hung in the air, their close friendship that had verged on something more, interrupted by Sarah's whirlwind romance with Raj, the path not taken. "The sanctuary needs a resident veterinarian with elephant expertise," Arjun said after a moment. "They've been trying to fill the position for months." Sarah turned to him, understanding the implied suggestion. "Are you offering me a job, Dr. Kapoor?" "I'm offering you a possibility," he corrected with a small smile. "What you do with it is entirely up to you." As night fell over Kuri, Sarah found herself at a crossroads once again. But unlike 7 years ago, when she had chosen the security and glamour Raj offered, she now understood exactly what she valued and what she was willing to sacrifice for. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The journey to the sanctuary, the uncertainty of Lakshmi's adaptation to yet another environment, the legal aftermath of Raj's actions. But for tonight, sitting beside an old friend who had come searching for her against all odds, Sarah allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten: hope. The Mumbai courthouse buzzed with media and spectators. Camera flashes erupted as Raj Mehta, once one of India's most powerful developers, was led into the courtroom in handcuffs. His tailored suit hung loosely on his frame, and dark circles shadowed his eyes, physical manifestations of his internal collapse. In the 2 weeks since his arrest, Raj's empire had begun to crumble. The Kaduli development project had been suspended pending environmental review. Investors had withdrawn support. The company's stock had plummeted. But these business concerns paled in comparison to the criminal charges he now faced. Attempted murder, criminal negligence, and perjury. Inspector Sharma sat in the front row, his expression neutral, but his posture alert. Beside him was Vikram, who had agreed to testify against his former partner in exchange for immunity from charges related to his own knowledge of events. The judge, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, called the court to order. This hearing will determine if there is sufficient evidence to proceed to trial in the case of the state versus Raj Mehta. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s, approached the bench. Your Honor, we have obtained new evidence confirming that Sarah Mehta has been found alive. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Though this news had broken days ago, official confirmation changed the legal landscape significantly. Mrs. Mehta was rescued from the Thar Desert region after surviving for nearly 2 weeks, thanks to assistance from local villagers. The prosecutor continued. This development modifies our charges from attempted murder to criminal negligence, causing endangerment. Raj's lawyer stood. Your Honor, in light of this development, my client wishes to change his plea to guilty on the charges of criminal negligence and perjury. Mr. Mehta deeply regrets his actions and wishes to take full responsibility. The judge considered this. Mr. Mehta, please rise. Raj stood shakily, his handcuffs rattling in the hushed courtroom. Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you waive your right to a trial? I do, Your Honor, and you make this plea freely and voluntarily, without coercion? Yes, Your Honor. The judge nodded. The court accepts your plea. Sentencing will be scheduled after a pre-sentencing report is prepared. Until then, bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody. As Raj was led away, his eyes caught on a familiar face in the back of the courtroom, his elderly housekeeper Parvati, who had served his family for decades. Her expression held no judgment, only a deep sadness. It was this, more than anything, that broke through Raj's carefully maintained composure. For the first time since his arrest, tears slid down his face, not for his lost empire or freedom, but for the simple human connection he had taken for granted and now stood to lose forever. In the holding cell after the hearing, Raj received an unexpected visitor. Inspector Sharma sat across from him, separated by a metal table bolted to the floor. I don't understand, Raj said. The hearing is over. This isn't official business, the inspector replied. I wanted to show you something. He placed a photograph on the table. It showed Sarah standing beside an elephant, both looking directly at the camera. Behind them was a desert landscape, starkly beautiful in its emptiness. This was taken after your wife was found, Inspector Sharma explained. The elephant apparently saved her life. The villagers are calling it a miracle. Raj stared at the image, unable to reconcile the Sarah he knew, elegant, composed, at home in Mumbai's elite circles, with this desert survivor standing confidently beside a massive elephant. She looks different, he managed finally. Near-death experiences change people, the inspector observed. So does betrayal. Raj flinched at the word, though he couldn't deny its accuracy. Why are you showing me this? Because you should know what your actions set in motion. Inspector Sharma's voice held no malice, only a policeman's matter-of-factness. Sometimes our worst moments lead others to their finest hours. After the inspector left, Raj remained fixated on the photograph he'd been permitted to keep, Sarah's. Expression contained something he'd never seen during their marriage, a quiet certainty, a peace that seemed to radiate from within. The elephant stood protectively close to her, its trunk curved slightly in her direction, as if they shared some silent communication. The bond between them was palpable even in a static image. Raj's thoughts were interrupted when his lawyer returned, carrying a thick folder of legal documents. The prosecutor has offered a plea deal, he explained, sitting across from Raj. 5 years with possibility of parole after 3, in exchange for your testimony against certain business associates involved in environmental regulation violations. Raj barely heard him, still staring at the photograph. Has Sarah made a statement about the case? The lawyer hesitated. She has submitted a written statement to the court. It will be considered during sentencing. What does it say? I'm not at liberty to share the exact contents, but the lawyer adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Mehta has not requested maximum penalties. Her statement focuses more on accountability and rehabilitation than punishment. Something broke open inside Raj, a dam holding back realizations too painful to confront. In that moment, he saw with perfect clarity how he had systematically destroyed what had once been a genuine love, how his ambition had corrupted him, how, in pursuing wealth and power, he had lost the moral compass Sarah had tried so desperately to help him maintain. I want to write a statement, he said suddenly, a complete confession. Everything, the environmental corners we cut, the officials we bribed, the indigenous land rights we violated, all of it. His lawyer looked alarmed. That would expose you to additional charges, potentially decades more in prison. I strongly advise against— I don't care, Raj interrupted. For once in my life, I'm going to do the right thing, regardless of the consequences. That evening, in his cell, Raj began to write. The words came in a torrent, all the compromises, the justifications, the slow ethical decay that had led him to the moment he had driven away from his wife in the desert. He wrote through the night, filling page after page with a confession that was also a reckoning. When dawn broke, Raj looked at the stack of handwritten sheets and felt, for the first time in years, the faintest glimmer of peace. He couldn't undo what he had done. He couldn't reclaim the life he had destroyed through his own actions. But he could at last tell the truth, and in doing so, perhaps begin the long journey toward becoming someone who deserved the second chance that Sarah, against all odds, had received. Dawn broke over Kuri village in a symphony of pink and gold. Sarah stood beside the specially modified transport vehicle that had arrived the previous evening, a flatbed truck with reinforced sides and a canopy to protect Lakshmi from the sun. During their journey, the entire village had gathered to bid farewell to the elephant who had become their guardian, and to Sarah, who had become their friend. Children presented Lakshmi with garlands of desert flowers, while elders offered prayers for safe passage. The elephant spirit will always have a place in Kuri, the headman told Sarah, pressing a small carved wooden elephant into her hand. As will you. Deepak approached with a package wrapped in cloth. Neem paste for Lakshmi's leg, prepared by Noor. She says to apply it until the new moon. Sarah accepted the gift with gratitude, touched by the blending of traditional wisdom with her own veterinary care. I'll make sure she receives it. The most difficult part was coaxing Lakshmi onto the transport. Despite her intelligence, the elephant was understandably wary of the vehicle, perhaps remembering similar transports during her circus days. It's all right, Sarah soothed, standing at the ramp with encouraging gestures. This journey leads to freedom, not captivity. Arjun joined her, his experience with elephant behavior proving invaluable. Together, they used gentle encouragement rather than force, offering Lakshmi's favorite foods and speaking in calm, reassuring tones. Finally, after nearly an hour of patient coaxing, Lakshmi tentatively placed one foot on the ramp, then another. With deliberate dignity, she boarded the transport, turning to face forward as if accepting this new phase of her journey. Sarah climbed up beside her, securing herself in the small handler's compartment that would allow her to remain with Lakshmi. Throughout the trip, Arjun would follow in his jeep, along with the wildlife officials in their vehicle. As the small convoy pulled away from Kuri, the villagers raised their hands in farewell, some wiping tears from their eyes. Sarah felt her own eyes growing moist, realizing how deeply she had connected with this community in such a short time. We'll visit, she promised Lakshmi, though she knew the elephant understood little of human language. Once you're settled. The journey to the Elephant Haven Sanctuary would take nearly 2 days, crossing from the western desert through increasingly green landscapes toward central Rajasthan. They planned to travel during the cooler morning and evening hours, resting during the midday heat. As they left the desert behind, Sarah noticed Lakshmi's fascination with the changing scenery. The elephant's trunk extended frequently, testing the air as vegetation became more abundant, and the harsh desert gave way to scrubland. At their first rest stop, a shaded area near a small stream, Lakshmi seemed almost giddy with excitement at the abundance of fresh green fodder. She explored enthusiastically, trunk swinging from plant to plant, sampling everything within reach. She remembers, Arjun observed, watching her delight. Somewhere in her mind, She remembers that the world isn't all desert. They allowed Lakshmi to wade in the shallow stream, her obvious joy at the plentiful water reinforcing how remarkable her desert survival had been. Sarah took the opportunity to reapply Noor's neem paste to the healing wound, pleased with the continued improvement. That evening, they camped beside the stream. Sarah and Arjun sat near the small fire they'd built, while Lakshmi remained close by, occasionally reaching out with her trunk to touch Sarah's shoulder as if ensuring she was still there. "She's bonded to you completely," Arjun said, watching their interaction. "It's extraordinary. I've been thinking about the position at the sanctuary," Sarah said after a comfortable silence. "I'd like to accept it, if the offer still stands." Arjun smiled, the firelight catching the genuine pleasure in his expression. "It stands. The director was thrilled when I mentioned the possibility. Your expertise with elephants, combined with your recent, unique experience, makes you ideal. And Lakshmi, will they accept her? Without question. She'll receive the best care available, and their habitat is designed to mimic natural conditions, as closely as possible." Sarah nodded, relief washing through her. "I couldn't bear to leave her now. Not after everything we've been through together." They resumed their journey before sunrise the next day. As they traveled eastward, the landscape continued to transform. Scattered trees appeared, then small forests, the air growing more humid and rich with the scent of vegetation. Lakshmi became increasingly animated, trumpeting occasionally as if celebrating the return to a more hospitable environment. Her alertness and excitement touched something deep in Sarah's heart, a reminder that even after years of adaptation to harsh conditions, the elephant had never forgotten where she truly belonged. Mid-morning brought an unexpected challenge when they encountered a small river, its bridge damaged by the recent floods. The detour would add hours to their journey and take them through more populated areas. "We'll need to be careful," said the lead wildlife officer. "People will be curious about an elephant on transport. We don't want to create a spectacle." The concern proved warranted. As they passed through a small town, crowds quickly gathered, pointing and taking photos. Children ran alongside the vehicle, calling to Lakshmi, who watched them with curious eyes. At one point, the transport was forced to stop while a broken-down truck was cleared from the narrow road. The delay allowed the crowd to grow, pressing closer, their excitement becoming overwhelming for Lakshmi, who began to show signs of distress, flapping ears, restless shifting, anxious rumbles. Sarah recognized the warning signs of elephant anxiety from her years of experience. "We need to create space," she told Arjun urgently. "She's getting overstimulated." Arjun worked with the local police who had arrived to manage the situation, establishing a perimeter around the transport. Sarah remained with Lakshmi, speaking softly and maintaining physical contact to reassure her. "Just a temporary delay," she soothed. "We'll be moving again soon." When they finally resumed their journey, Sarah felt a new urgency to reach the sanctuary, a protected space where Lakshmi would be shielded from human curiosity and allowed to simply be an elephant again. Late that afternoon, the landscape opened into rolling hills covered with grassland and scattered trees. Elephant country. Lakshmi's excitement was palpable, her trunk constantly testing the air, her body swaying with anticipation. "We're close," Arjun called up to Sarah from his jeep. "Just over that rise." As they crested the hill, the Elephant Haven Sanctuary came into view. Hundreds of acres of natural habitat enclosed by a boundary that was designed to protect rather than confine. At the entrance, a small cluster of buildings housed the medical facilities, research center, and staff accommodations. Dr. Meera Patel, the sanctuary's director, waited to greet them, her weathered face breaking into a wide smile as the transport approached. Behind her, visible in the distance, several elephants moved peacefully through the grassland, some alone, others in small family groups. Lakshmi stood very still, gazing out at this new world. Then she raised her trunk and trumpeted, a sound of recognition, of homecoming, of possibility. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes, overwhelmed by the realization that their extraordinary journey together had led them both exactly where they needed to be. The transport's ramp lowered slowly, creating a bridge between Lakshmi's traveling compartment and her new home. Sarah stood beside Dr. Meera Patel, watching as the elephant hesitated at the threshold, trunk testing the unfamiliar air. "Take your time," Sarah encouraged softly. "It's safe here." After a moment's consideration, Lakshmi descended with deliberate steps, her massive feet touching the soft grass of the sanctuary. She paused, seeming to marvel at the lush greenery beneath her, so different from the harsh desert sand she had known for years. Remarkable condition, considering what she's been through, Dr. Patel observed, her experienced eyes assessing Lakshmi professionally. That leg is healing nicely, though we'll want to continue treatment in our medical facility. She's a survivor, Sarah replied, watching as Lakshmi explored her immediate surroundings, trunk swinging from plant to plant, sampling the rich variety of vegetation. The sanctuary's layout was thoughtfully designed to mimic natural elephant habitat. Rolling grasslands, interspersed with trees, multiple water sources, mud wallows, and various enrichment areas. All were visible from the reception center's observation deck, where Sarah now stood with Dr. Patel and Arjun. We currently have 17 elephants in residence, Dr. Patel explained, pointing toward distant gray forms moving peacefully through the landscape. Most are rescued from circuses, temples, or illegal wildlife trade. Each has their own story of trauma and recovery. How do you integrate newcomers? Sarah asked, her professional interest engaged despite her emotional investment in Lakshmi. Gradually, we have several introduction paddocks where new elephants can see and smell the herd before direct contact. Some adapt quickly. Others need months of adjustment. As they spoke, Lakshmi continued her exploration, moving with increasing confidence through the introduction area. Suddenly she froze, trunk raised high, testing the air with intense concentration. She's sensing the other elephants, Arjun explained, though Sarah had already recognized the behavior. What happened next astonished everyone watching. Lakshmi raised her trunk and released a powerful trumpet call, a sound Sarah had never heard from her before, containing notes of question, excitement, and something like hope. From across the sanctuary, an answering call echoed back. Dr. Patel checked her records quickly. That's Sita, one of our oldest residents, rescued from a temple in Jaipur about 12 years ago. The significance hit Sarah immediately. Lakshmi has the Jaipur temple marking. They might know each other. Impossible, Dr. Patel began, then stopped herself. Well, perhaps not impossible. Elephants never forget after all. They watched as Lakshmi trumpeted again, more urgently this time. The answering call sounded closer. Sita was approaching the boundary of the introduction area, drawn by a voice from her past. Should we expedite the introduction? Arjun asked, his researcher's curiosity evident. Dr. Patel hesitated, weighing professional caution against the clear communication occurring between the elephants. Let's observe first. They moved to a better vantage point, where they could see both Lakshmi and the approaching Sita, an elderly female elephant with graceful tusks and a similar lotus marking behind her ear. The two elephants stood on opposite sides of the fence, trunks extended toward each other in unmistakable recognition. Sisters, Dr. Patel whispered. They must be sisters, or at least from the same temple herd. The emotional reunion brought tears to Sarah's eyes. After years of isolation in the desert, Lakshmi had found family, a connection to her life before captivity and escape. We can open the gate, Dr. Patel decided, signaling to her staff. This isn't an ordinary introduction scenario. As the gate swung open, creating a passage between the introduction area and the main sanctuary, Lakshmi and Sita approached each other with a deliberate grace that belied their massive size. Their trunks intertwined in elephant greeting, bodies pressing close, soft rumbles of communication passing between them. Incredible, Arjun murmured, capturing photographs for the sanctuary's research records. Reunited after a decade or more, Sarah watched, heart full, as Lakshmi experienced this profound homecoming. The elephant who had saved her life in the desert was now receiving her own second chance, not just at survival, but at connection and belonging. That evening, after Lakshmi had been examined in the medical facility and released to join Sita, in a spacious enclosure, Sarah sat with Dr. Patel in the sanctuary's simple dining hall. The position is yours if you want it, the director confirmed, passing Sarah a cup of chai. We need a veterinarian with your expertise, especially your experience with traumatized elephants. I do want it, Sarah replied without hesitation. But I should warn you. My personal situation is complicated right now. My husband is facing criminal charges, and there will likely be media attention when the case goes to trial. Dr. Patel waved away this concern. The sanctuary is accustomed to protecting its residents, human and elephant alike, from unwanted attention. Your personal circumstances don't concern me. Your skills and compassion do. Later, Sarah visited Lakshmi in her night enclosure. The elephant had been given a spacious area with fresh water, mineral supplements, and abundant fodder. Sita remained nearby, the two elephants maintaining tactile contact, as if afraid the other might disappear again. "You found your family," Sarah said softly, reaching through the protective barrier to stroke Lakshmi's trunk. "Just as I'm finding mine," Lakshmi rumbled in response, her intelligent eyes seeming to hold understanding beyond human comprehension. She gently took the apple Sarah offered, then returned her attention to Sita, the two elephants communicating in their ancient, subtle language of touch, scent, and low-frequency sounds. As Sarah walked back toward the guest quarters where she would stay until permanent accommodation was arranged, she felt a profound sense of rightness. The path ahead would not be easy. There were legal matters to resolve, a divorce to finalize, a new life to build from the ashes of the old. But watching Lakshmi find her way back to her elephant family had shown Sarah what was possible when you survived the desert, both literal and metaphorical. Sometimes, what seemed like an ending was merely a difficult passage to where you truly belonged. Under the vast, starry sky, so similar to the one she and Lakshmi had shared in the desert, yet somehow different here, Sarah made a silent promise. To herself, she would build a new life with the same resilience and courage Lakshmi had shown, and she would never again compromise her true nature for anyone or anything. 3 months after arriving at the Elephant Haven Sanctuary, Sarah had settled into a rhythm that felt more authentic than any life she had known before. Her small cottage on the sanctuary grounds offered a perfect balance of solitude and connection, close, enough to the elephant enclosures for pre-dawn checks on her patients, yet peaceful enough for evenings spent reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here. As the sanctuary's lead veterinarian, Sarah's days were filled with purpose. She supervised Lakshmi's ongoing rehabilitation, monitored the health of all 17 resident elephants, and collaborated with Dr. Patel on research documenting the recovery patterns of traumatized elephants. On this particular morning, Sarah watched from the observation platform as Lakshmi and Sita moved together through the main habitat, now fully integrated with the sanctuary's elephant community. Lakshmi's desert-adapted body had gradually transformed, her skin more supple from regular mud baths. Her overall condition improved from the rich, varied diet. "The desert queen becomes a forest lady," Arjun said, joining Sarah at the railing. Since accepting a joint position with the sanctuary and his research institute, Arjun had become a regular presence, his expertise in elephant behavior complementing Sarah's veterinary skills. Their professional partnership had rekindled their friendship, with the possibility of something deeper emerging slowly, naturally, neither rushing what both recognized as important. "She still loves the sunshine more than the others," Sarah observed, noting how Lakshmi chose open grassland, while many sanctuary elephants preferred the shade. "Some desert adaptations remain." Speaking of adaptations, Arjun handed her a tablet displaying a news article. "Your story continues to make waves." The headline read, "Desert Miracle Inspires Record Donations to Elephant Conservation." The article detailed how Sarah's widely publicized survival story, and Lakshmi's extraordinary role in it, had sparked unprecedented public interest in elephant protection initiatives across India. The Kaduli Elephant Corridor, the one Raj wanted to develop, has been officially protected, Arjun pointed out. "Your experience changed minds that facts and figures couldn't reach." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. While she took no pleasure in Raj's downfall, the protection of the elephant corridor represented a victory for the work she had always believed in. "Conservation needs both science and stories," she acknowledged. "People protect what touches their hearts." Her phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer. The divorce proceedings were finally complete. Though Raj had attempted to contact her several times from prison, Sarah had maintained distance, communicating only through legal representatives. His genuine remorse seemed sincere, but some breaches of trust could not be repaired, only acknowledged and released. That afternoon, Sarah conducted a training session for sanctuary volunteers, mostly university students and ecotourism guides, learning proper elephant observation techniques. As she explained the subtle body language cues that indicated elephant emotional states, she noticed a film crew setting up near the visitor center. National Geographic, Dr. Patel explained later, joining Sarah for lunch. "They're doing a documentary on innovative conservation approaches. Your work with Lakshmi will be featured, if you're comfortable with that." Sarah hesitated, still adjusting to the public interest her story had generated. Will it help the sanctuary? Immensely. Funding, awareness, political support. We need all of it to expand our protected areas. Then I'll participate, Sarah decided. Though Lakshmi is the real star, the documentary team proved respectful and professional, focusing on the sanctuary's scientific work, rather than sensationalizing Sarah's desert ordeal. They captured footage of Lakshmi's interactions with Sita, her physical therapy sessions for her now-healed leg, and her remarkable adaptation to sanctuary life. There's something special about her, the director commented, watching Lakshmi gently guide a younger elephant toward a mineral lick, an intelligence that seems almost human. I think it's the reverse, Sarah replied. There's something elephantine about the best parts of humanity, our capacity for compassion, for family bonds, for helping those in need without expectation of return. As filming concluded, the production company made a significant donation to the sanctuary's expansion fund. That evening, as Sarah reviewed the day's medical records in her cottage, she received an unexpected visitor, Inspector Sharma. Mrs. Mehta, he greeted her formally. I apologize for arriving unannounced. It's Dr. Collins again, actually, Sarah corrected gently, having reverted to her maiden name after the divorce. Please come in. The inspector declined her offer of tea, his expression suggesting his visit was strictly professional. I came to inform you personally that your former husband's sentencing has been completed. 4 years imprisonment with additional community service focused on environmental restoration projects after his release. Sarah nodded, having been informed of the likely outcome by her lawyer. Thank you for telling me yourself. There is one more thing. Inspector Sharma handed her an envelope. Mr. Mehta asked me to deliver this. You are under no obligation to read it. After the inspector left, Sarah sat with the unopened letter, weighing whether to read Raj's words or simply let the past remain in the past. Finally, deciding that closure required courage, she opened it. The letter was handwritten, the familiar script bringing unexpected emotion. Raj expressed profound remorse, not asking for forgiveness, but acknowledging the full weight of his actions. He had signed over half his remaining assets to create a foundation for elephant habitat preservation, with Sarah named as honorary director should she wish to accept. I cannot undo what I did, he concluded. But I can ensure that something meaningful emerges from my gravest mistake. The foundation is yours to direct or decline. Either way, the funding is secured for the elephant corridors you always fought to protect. Sarah set the letter aside, her feelings too complex to untangle. In a single evening, the foundation represented a significant opportunity for conservation work, yet accepting any connection to Raj required forgiveness she wasn't sure she could offer. The next morning, Sarah discussed the foundation offer with Dr. Patel and Arjun, valuing their perspectives on this unexpected development. The money would save critical habitats, Dr. Patel noted pragmatically, including areas connecting to our sanctuary. But at what personal cost to you? Arjun asked, his concern evident. No one would blame you for declining. Sarah walked to the observation area, watching Lakshmi in the distance. The elephant who had once been abandoned to a hostile environment had not only survived but thrived, creating new bonds and new purpose from adversity. I'll accept the director position, she decided. Not for Raj, but for the elephants, and I'll ensure the foundation operates with complete transparency and scientific integrity. That afternoon, as Sarah conducted Lakshmi's monthly health assessment, she felt a sense of alignment that had eluded her for years. The path forward was clear, using her expertise, her platform, and now this unexpected resource to protect the creatures she had always loved. We've both found our way to where we belong, she told Lakshmi, who responded with a gentle touch of her trunk against Sarah's cheek, the elephant equivalent of agreement. 1 year to the day after Sarah had been abandoned in the Thar Desert, she stood on the observation platform at Elephant Haven, watching the morning mist rise from the sanctuary grounds. The transformation of the past 12 months seemed almost as miraculous as her desert survival. The sanctuary had expanded, nearly doubling its protected acreage thanks partly to funds from the Mehta Foundation for Elephant Conservation, which Sarah now directed alongside her veterinary duties. 4 new elephants had been rescued from exploitative conditions, bringing their resident population to 21. But the most remarkable development stood in the central clearing. Lakshmi, her body now healthy and strong, with a 3-month-old calf walking unsteadily beside her. The pregnancy had been unexpected, discovered during a routine health check 5 months after Lakshmi's arrival. DNA testing had confirmed that the father was Ganesh, a male elephant rescued from an illegal logging operation, with whom Lakshmi had formed a close bond. "I still can't quite believe it," Arjun said, joining Sarah at the railing. "A desert survivor becoming a mother. Nature finds a way." The calf, named Maya by sanctuary staff, represented hope in its purest form, new life emerging from a history of hardship. Her playful antics brought joy to everyone at the sanctuary, but especially to Sarah, who had been present for the birth and had formed a special bond with the baby elephant. "The desert tribes would call it destiny," Sarah replied, remembering the wisdom Deepak had shared during her time in Kuri. Full-circle moments that reveal the pattern beneath our lives. Much had changed in a year. The Elephant Haven Sanctuary had become internationally renowned, featured in conservation journals and wildlife documentaries. Sarah had published research on desert-adapted elephant behaviors, documenting Lakshmi's unique survival strategies that challenged existing understanding of elephantine capabilities. On a personal level, her relationship with Arjun had deepened into something neither rushed nor defined by past trauma. They shared work, purpose, and increasingly, a vision for the future. The foundation she directed had created a network of protected corridors, connecting fragmented elephant habitats across 3 states. "The Kuri village representatives arrived today," Arjun reminded her, checking his watch. "Their community conservation program is impressive." After Lakshmi's story had spread, the village had leveraged their connection to the Desert Elephant Guardian to establish an ecotourism initiative and conservation education center. Deepak now led desert treks that combined traditional knowledge with environmental awareness, and Noor taught workshops on indigenous medicinal plants. "I'm looking forward to showing them how Lakshmi has adapted," Sarah said. They were part of her journey, and mine. Later that morning, as Sarah conducted training for new veterinary interns, a familiar rumble drew her attention to the viewing area. Lakshmi had approached with Maya, as if knowing visitors from her past would be arriving. "She remembers everything," Sarah told the students, watching Lakshmi's alert posture. Elephants carry their entire history with them, processing it with an emotional intelligence that rivals our own. When the Kuri delegation arrived, Deepak, Noor, and the village headman among them, their reaction to seeing Lakshmi with her calf moved Sarah deeply. The elderly Noor wept openly, calling it a blessing from the gods. The headman presented the sanctuary with a hand-carved wooden statue depicting Lakshmi giving shade to a human figure in the desert. "Your story has traveled far," he told Sarah. "It teaches that kindness crosses all boundaries: human, animal, the desert itself." That evening, a small celebration brought together sanctuary staff, researchers, and the Kuri visitors. Under a canopy of stars reminiscent of desert nights, they shared stories of elephant wisdom and human folly, of conservation challenges and unexpected partnerships. As conversation flowed around her, Sarah slipped away briefly to check on Lakshmi and Maya in their night enclosure. The mother elephant acknowledged her approach with a soft rumble, while the calf gambled over excitedly, trunk reaching for the treats she knew Sarah might be carrying. "You've taught me more than I could learn in a lifetime of research," Sarah told Lakshmi, offering chunks of fruit to both elephants. "About resilience, about adaptation, about finding your way home even when the path seems impossible." Lakshmi's response was to gently touch Sarah's cheek with her trunk, the same gesture of connection she had offered in the desert when they were both struggling to survive. It spoke of recognition across species, of something deeper than words could express. Returning to the gathering, Sarah found Arjun waiting for her at the edge of the light. "Everything okay?" he asked. "More than okay," she answered truthfully. "I was just thinking about unexpected journeys. A year ago today, I thought my life was ending in that desert. I couldn't have imagined standing here now." The celebration continued into the night, with plans made for expanded collaboration between the sanctuary and the Kuri Conservation Initiative. As the hour grew late, Dr. Patel asked Sarah to say a few words. Standing before this unlikely assembly of desert villagers, international researchers, and dedicated conservationists, Sarah found herself thinking of the moment Lakshmi had first appeared in the desert, an impossible savior arriving exactly when needed. "A year ago, I was abandoned in one of the harshest environments on Earth," she began, her voice steady and clear. "What seemed like an ending became a beginning. What looked like tragedy became transformation." She told them about waking in the Desert shade to find an elephant standing guard, about learning to see the hidden abundance in apparently barren landscapes, about discovering that sometimes we must lose everything to find our true purpose. Lakshmi taught me that boundaries we create, between species, between ecosystems, between ways of knowing, are more permeable than we imagine. The elephant from the temple who adapted to the desert and now thrives in the sanctuary represents our capacity to transcend the limitations we place on ourselves and others. As she concluded, Sarah raised her glass. To unexpected saviors, to second chances, and to the wisdom that sometimes finds us only when we are lost. The gathering dispersed gradually, conversations continuing in small groups beneath the star-filled sky. Later, as Sarah walked with Arjun toward their respective cottages, a familiar trumpeting call echoed across the sanctuary, Lakshmi's distinctive voice raised in what sounded remarkably like celebration. "She knows," Sarah said, smiling at the nighttime chorus of answering rumbles from other elephants. "Somehow she knows what day this is." Arjun's hand found hers in the darkness, a simple connection that asked nothing and offered everything. Some things defy scientific explanation. Maybe that's as it should be. As Sarah fell asleep that night, the sounds of the sanctuary, distant elephant calls, nocturnal birds, the rustle of wind through trees, created a lullaby of belonging. The desert had stripped away everything she thought she needed, revealing what was truly essential: purpose, connection, and the courage to begin again. And in the heart of the sanctuary, beneath the same stars that had witnessed her darkest moment. A year earlier, Lakshmi stood guard over her sleeping calf, the ultimate testament to life's capacity for renewal, even in the harshest deserts of experience. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe to our channel, and share your own experiences with unexpected kindness in the comments below.